everybody, and welcome to The Search. My name is Lisa. How are you today? I hope everything is going well. If this is your first time, hello and welcome. I upload every Thursday at 8 p.m. So if you want to make sure to set your notifications, it really helps us grow in the community. And for all my search warriors, welcome back. I am excited to continue our growth. We are doing so well. We have started off our season 3 with such a great start. So, speaking of starting, let's get into it. Today is a doozy. This one has worn me for quite some time since I've heard of it, and this month is Mental Health Awareness Month. And after you hear the story, I definitely feel that mental health illness was a big factor. And where did it start to go wrong? We can talk about that later. So today we are talking about the Todt family. Now, the Todt family, and I will get into their background, but as of 2019, the Todt family was, they were 5. There was a total of 5 of them. Now, if I had to describe the Todt family and looking at them, I would definitely say the Leave It to Beaver family. They were really picture perfect. They had 3 children. It was Anthony, they called him Tony, which was the father. Then there was Megan, that was the mother. All right. And then we had the children, which were Alex, Tyler, and Zoe. So, and then they had the little dog. And why I want to tell you picture perfect. So let's go back into a little bit of their background. Tony and Megan met back in high school and going into college. All right. So they actually both were going into physical therapy. So they meet, really get into it in college, and they end up going through college together. They graduate with their masters. They get married. They start a physical therapy practice, and they're in this town, Salem, Connecticut. So this is a little small town. So everybody kind of once they open their practice, kind of got to know them. The reputations were incredible. Megan did things like yoga on the side, as well as running the practice with him. And he would do like soccer coaching. Also worked with children with disabilities, different things like that. When people looked at him, it was like they were so caring, so giving. And because of everything that they did, they were almost like celebrities within the town because they were so genuine at what they did and helping, and they were, thriving within the businesses. So while all this is happening, they just get pregnant. So in 2006, they had their first child, which was Alex. And shortly after Alex, within 2 years, in 2008, they had Tyler, so their second boy. And then later to follow would be in 2015, and they had Zoe. They said that when Tony found out that he was having a little girl, that he was just on the moon. They said when they say, when like Megan was glowing, Tony was glowing. All right. So that's kind of how life was. Now, and it even gets even more picture perfect. Things that they like to do far as vacationing, and they were able to do it because they made good money. They had practices. In fact, they were opening a second practice as well. So that tells you things were going good. Now, they like to go down to Disney World area. And they ended up getting and staying in a place in Celebration, Florida. Now, who has heard of Celebration, Florida? Please sound off in the comments if you have. Today, in 2024, it is not what it was in the time period I'm kind of talking of, 2015s, 10 years ago pretty much. But from what I understand, Celebration is like a neighborhood. It is a big area that was created basically from the idea, I believe, from Walt Disney. It was made to be almost like the perfect world. People live in here. It was even said during special times and celebrations of things, like there was actually like paid actors that went in, like sat on porches. Like when you went through this neighborhood, it was picture perfect. The white picket fences, and it was made to be like that. It was right outside of Disney. I mean, could you imagine the HOA fees for that? I cannot, okay? Could you imagine the rules to live in there? But basically, it was like they brought fantasy to reality. Crazy. But also how fun for kids grow up. Could you imagine growing up in an area like that? The kids were living well. You're living nice. People, like I said, never had worries of anything. They traveled a lot back and forth. They were doing, like she thought, financially well. And we'll get back to that. So she decided that she wanted to homeschool. Now, remind you, she is now, as we move along, living down in what we would call snowbirds, living down in Celebration, Florida, especially during the winter months. And then they would, go up because that's where the businesses were up in Connecticut. Tony would go back, and forth doing both. And actually, he would do like traveling where he was like physical therapist when he was down in Florida. So he actually did some work down there. So it just seemed like, wow, everything is colliding for them. Nothing is ever picture perfect. So this is the life they're leading. And now I want to take you to 2019. Boy, did we change tunes. I want to give you a little background before I really get into more on Tony. Tony had a father, all right, and his name was Robert, and his mom's name is Loretta, okay? And when Tony was 4 years old, his father was arrested in July of 1980. I'll tell you why. He was charged with hiring one of his students, all right, to shoot and kill his wife, Loretta, in order to marry his mistress. Tony was just 4 years old, like I said, at the time of it, and a witness to the attack of his own mom. I mean, that is trauma, okay? 4 years old. And, we learn our most, they say, between 0 and 5. At 4, you don't realize, like, your emotions you're taking in. That is lifelong trauma to see that. But I will say this. The would-be assassin strictly ordered harm to no one else but Loretta. When I say assassin, I'm talking about the father, Robert, of course. But Loretta survived the bullet to her head. Amazing, right? She actually stuck with him a little after that, not wanting to really believe it all, but she did eventually leave him and go remarry. So I know that the father, did get arrested. I'm not sure exactly how long he served on the attempt, but anyway, he is, as of 2019, he was back out. Getting up to 2019, I will tell you that Tony had cut off all ties with his dad. Of course, he got a phone call from him. And I wonder if that began like the trauma react. I don't know. I don't know if that really did, but I have seen people cut people with extreme measures out of their life when they come back around. It's kind of like at holidays, things will trigger people. The trauma from things in the past, holidays are affected. Kind of like one of those deals. I don't know. But here we go, guys. So, like I said, Megan is down in her fantasy living neighborhood down in Celebration, Florida, and Tony is going back and forth. There starts to be some funny business. One thing I want to mention is while living down there in Florida in 2017, Megan actually got bit by a tick. Now, for anybody that knows what that does, it can cause Lyme disease. And with her, it did. She suffered bouts of depression. She became more reserved, more isolated. See, you gotta remember, she was a yoga teacher. She was really into helping other children, teaching her kids at home, adventures, and she wasn't doing that. There was signs of some depression. There was even a mention on Tony's side of the family, hearing one time that she had even mentioned about the apocalypse coming, the end of time, different things, and just they said they remembered hearing that. Then it's kind of like stood out to them. Like that was kind of a weird talk, but that's back in 2017. Things had kind of moved forward, and that's what it was. By 2019, things were getting weird, and the employees were starting to notice things. And one of them was bounce checks with their employee checks. Now, they thought the world of them, and Tony would give them answers. Somehow, he would kind of work it out, enough to get everybody, quiet. I will say by this time, Tony had put on weight and had developed diabetes also. Something is taking tolls. And what is it? What's going on? Why is this family that thrived and doing so well is now seems to there's depression going on, well, with the Lyme disease. Also, there was talk of Megan kind of getting into spiritual medium, kind of just looking into other things than just normal life, like paranormal activities, talking about, the end of times, just different things that were out of her norm because she was really into more natural things, natural healings, healthy, positive things that a lot of people do, okay? Now, 2019, it was discovered that Tony was charging patients for care that they had never received. So, how this started happening was, now remember, it was a small area where they were at in Connecticut. So everybody really knew them. And so patients say they hadn't gone to them. Physical therapy, you usually go for a certain amount of times. You're allotted like, okay, 10 sessions, your insurance will pay for this. Well, and then after that, you're done. It's not something that you like continue to go to like a primary, okay? So anyway, patients like hadn't been there in 6 months were getting bills, and it was just starting, things like that were starting to happen. People were starting to say, hey, what's going on? Reports start coming in. Things are now, the heat is coming on. Okay. And this isn't good. Was he doing this to provide the vacationing, the home down in Celebration? And they also had taken out additional loans from firms in New York City, and they were suing him for failure to pay. And that just alone was over $100,000. As more went on, we are now getting into the latter part of the year, and they were pretty close, like I said, with the families and Megan with her families. And when the holidays were coming, Megan wasn't really reaching out and really making any, they used like getting together. So at one time, like, the family called and they weren't getting answers, and then they finally do get an answer, and Tony tells them, look, Megan's got the flu, I've got the flu, we are all sick, and basically that's kind of, what he's saying. Nobody, though, had spoke to Megan. On December 29th, so now the holidays have passed, and this is totally not normal that people have not talked to them during the holidays, other than Tony saying they have the flu. I mean, it just was not normal, okay? You got to think of, these are people that are a big part of the community too. On the 29th, there's a welfare call made, all right? On the first one, they go out there and they check, and no one answers. No one answers. This is in Celebration, okay? No one answers. So imagine, and this neighborhood too, very active down there. I mean, they had many things going on during the holidays. Like, instead of Oktoberfest, they had like Snowball Fest. So people understand that when you are not present, people notice. All right, people notice. They went, nobody was there. They thought maybe they went back up. They traveled back and forth, and the community kind of started thinking maybe they were gone. January 10th comes, and actually a couple days before that, more calls are coming. And they're like, look, we need you to go back, okay? Because this ain't this ain't jiving. Something's wrong. We're not getting any answers. Something's wrong. They got kids, and we haven't heard from the kids, and they're just really involved. Well, guys, in the meantime, FBI had actually stepped in on this case because they were checking into all the fraud that he had been doing with the company. So he had been billing a lot out to, I guess, maintain this lavish lifestyle and whatever else he was doing on the side. Guess what? When they made this call on January 13th, the FBI was like, oh, we'll go and we'll get in. So they go out there because they're prepared to arrest Tony for the fraudulent charges. They get out there and they are prepared to serve Tony and arrest him on these charges. When they get there, the law enforcement get there, they knock on the door. They're like, we're here. Go ahead, open up. Nobody's opening up, right? Nobody's there, but they're like, we're going in, like, but we're giving you a fair chance, but we're coming in. So anyway, the cop just puts his hands on the doorknob, and it opens. So they didn't have to bust anything down. They go in there, and there's no electricity on. So everything's, kind of darkish. It's not nighttime outside, so it's a little light but dark. No electricity, which was weird. They announce who they are. They look for Tony, call out for him, and he comes down. And they notice, the cop's like, something's not right here. It's not smelling right. There's no electricity. It seemed hot in there, which was weird, even though it was in January. But you gotta remember, they're down in Florida. In the winters, it still gets a little chilly, but it was a little warm, so which made the stench even a little worse. Tony hollers up for Megan, because they want to see everybody. They're ready to talk. Like I said, the FBI is there. They've got these charges, about the health frauds. He's like, Megan. The cops are like, Megan.
We left. Yeah, upstairs. I think so. Tony, you upstairs? Hey, come downstairs, bud. No. All right. Yeah, take your time. Any children, you? I can't remember if they went to a sleepover last night. Keep coming downstairs. No, she didn't. Yeah, like 7-7. Mm-hmm. What's your wife's name? Megan. Has anyone heard her talk? No. Megan? Megan? All right, come on down, buddy. Megan, face forward for me, all right? Put your hands forward, too, all right?
Megan?
Got a locked door right
Megan?
Tony is like shaking. He's like, what is going on, right? That's what he's acting like. What is going on? He's kind of shaking. You can tell that he knows that everything is getting ready to just go. And it is horrible. Horrible what happens next.
Please take this time to like the video and subscribe below to the Search with Lisa. If you have made it this far in the video, please comment down below #SearchWarriors. Thank you for your support.
Cops continue to go up the stairs without being too detailed. I just want to add this in that there's some things I hold back on just because when it is on YouTube, I am always aware if a family member is watching. I'm just going to keep it very simple, just read between the lines. I just needed to kind of put that in there. Basically, they get there and they find Megan and the children and even the dog, and they're all gone. So bad that the police didn't even really recognize they were black for a reason. Been there about a couple weeks, you know. And that's what I'll say about that. Tony had been living there. He had been staying in that house for like 3 weeks. Because remind you, they started calling and looking around the 29th. Stuff was going on before this, like not answering. The cops do not get in. We are now into January 13th. He has been in there the whole time. So the whole family is gone. And even though he was there, which is kind of weird, he let the mail pile up on the porch at the time, and there was an eviction notice that was placed on the door. A warrant was issued for, they call him Anthony or Tony's arrest, and authorities arrived, like I said, at the home. That was the January 13th. So it's like, were you trying to make people think that you weren't there the whole time? Like, what were you planning? You weren't getting the mail? Did they just kind of pop up on you before you could figure out what you were gonna do? One thing that I felt was a little odd too was that even though you couldn't recognize things, that they had crucifixes in their hands. This goes really deep. That's why I said about mental health illness. Yeah. Not making any excuses, but this is major. Tony himself said that he had consumed a large amount of Benadryl in what he claimed was a suicide attempt. The children had also been drugged with Benadryl. So, Tony claims, all right, guys, the inability to recall any of the events of the murders, and also testified that initial confession had been made under duress, meaning because he had taken all that Benadryl. Like that, what he was saying was, but not quite right. He did eventually confess, guys. He did.
11:30 at night. We set the alarm for 11:30 at night, and got up out of bed. And it was to do Zoe first. Okay. Meg walked me to the room, and she walked back into her room. Zoe was upstairs in her room. Okay. Alex was upstairs in his room. Tyler was asleep downstairs in the library room. So I went into Zoe's room, and it took me 2 or 3 hours sitting there because it's a tough. But the everlasting salvation and the thought of that everlasting salvation was there, and I needed to save her soul in order to be with us. Megan kept coming in. What's going on? I'm like, it'll be done in a little bit, it'll be done in a little bit. It's getting past that, I'm not, you know? The initial thought was to stab into the umbilicus above the navel, so I could get the inferior vena cava or the abdominal aorta, and it'd be bleed out within no time whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
I know I tried. I don't know if I ever punctured it. I don't know if I did or not. I saw a little mark on her, but I don't know if I saw anything. But then she rolled and started squiggling, and I put my hand over her mouth, and I put a pillow over top of her. So she went, and then she started to fade away. And I just held that until there was no motion left.
So how long from the time that you had the knife out to the suffocation until you think that she was deceased?
I want to say 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I stabbed him, and he started kicking, was trying to get up, and he kept rolling. So I ended up putting there was a pillow there, and I put a pillow in the back of his head so he wouldn't hit me with the back of his head. And I reached around with my hand and held his nose in his mouth.
But basically, he wanted to blame pretty much the victim. One of his stories and basically he's taking the blame to make her look better. When the cop was talking to him, and he just wished that he was gone too, like they were in a pack. He kind of would go back and forth, and he talked about how mentally ill his wife was, and that she basically, when he'd come home, had found her, and that she had done it to them, and that to herself and to her children, I guess overdosing them with Benadryl. Allegedly, I don't know completely what all the autopsies revealed, but at this point, I was more just disgusted with how this was missed, because their whole life was on the internet, on Instagram, all their pictures, everything. There was so many people involved. How can one person work in the health profession and help people, disability people, any type, do things, soccer coaches, love their children? I mean, people would envy to be like them and their family, and yet be like the worst of the worst. And now was like claiming allegedly that she had done it. She felt the world was coming to an end, apocalypse coming. She was really getting into like this spiritual medium. She was starting to like talk about ghosts, that she wanted before the end of times. She wanted to reincarnate all of them together, that he was willing to basically take this to protect her. He would, plead guilty. Oh, what an honor, right? Okay. Remember when I mentioned that they said that she had talked about the end of times and apocalypse, things like that? That was his side of the family, by the way, that had mentioned that, not hers. Does this look like a deal of somebody's got themselves really wrapped up in a big bundle of financial issues, and really just probably so narcissistic, and could not face it that they had to do something so extreme? Did the father calling bring something up in him, ideas, if anything? I don't know. It's one thing when we see somewhat when husbands do things to wives, but we can never comprehend to the children. Why the children? I mean, I still say why the mom too, believe me, but why the children? There's nothing, right? Did he think that he was going to walk away from this? I don't know. I will sum this up telling you that in 2022, Tony Todt was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In a landmark move, 1 year of additional incarceration was added to his sentence for animal cruelty, charges stemming from also taking the dog. Good. You know, I'm glad that judge was like, you know what? We are even including this dog. You know, shame on you. So I want to tell you at the time, their ages at the time, Tony was 44. Again, the wife was 42, Megan was. And their 3 children, Alec, he was 13, Tyler was 11, and Zoe was 4 at the time. That was in 2019. I don't do a lot of cases like this, but is this a case of talking about repeating history? Or is this, mental, or like hereditary mental health illness? The reason that I say this is the father actually had a lot of the same characteristics far as the perfect looking family, well known, well respected. His wife Loretta was very well respected. It was a different time, of course, with them, but it's very strange, very strange. But I wanted to bring awareness to this. I also, to mental health illness, if you are feeling different, when you see that there is something going on in your family, one of your members, listen, be wrong and be safe than to not do anything and something happen. Not that you are responsible for other people's lives, but you are responsible, especially if you feel children are in danger. Okay? So if you notice, please call and, like you said, do these welfare checks. If you are continually not hearing from the person, if they are withdrawing, check on these people. Continue to check on them. Call them, go by there, send people by. Don't stop. Don't stop. And we have to recognize the symptoms of depression or what is going on. That is something more we need to focus on. I will not be doing all that in this video, but that is stuff that I do. So make sure that you also follow me on my socials. I always do a ribbon at the end of each episode, and the ribbon represents a prayer for justice. Now, we did receive justice. He is serving, but we want to say a prayer for them. So I still make a ribbon and put it out for a prayer for the family. For Megan, for Alex, for Tyler, and Zoe. (2019). Definitely gone too soon. So everybody, that concludes tonight's case. I ask that you please leave a comment below. Tell me what you think. If you are new, I hope that you please hit the subscribe button, notification, so that you don't miss anything going on, and give us a thumbs up if you appreciated this episode. And I will see you all on the next search. Good night, everybody.